teachers and professors of Reddit, what is the cleverest or dumbest way you've seen a student cheat? Once I was attending a school spelling bee, where the contestant was allowed to ask questions like, can you repeat the word, and can you use that in a sentence? One of the children asked the judge to spell the word, and the judges reflexively spelled it for him. They caught their mistake immediately, and gave him a different word instead. So I guess that sort of worked, since he didn't know the first one. Clever though. In my aquatics class we had a test on the computer, where we had to identify like 50 fish. I had no idea what any of the fish were, so I was panicking and looking for clues. I found that if you clicked save as, then it would show the file name, which was the name of the fish. In middle school I had a math teacher who wore a hearing aid, and boy, this thing must have been a piece of shoot. It would constantly start ringing from feedback or something, and after a month or so we learned that he couldn't hear shoot when it was ringing. So when the next test comes up, the ringing starts about 10 minutes in. All we had to do was keep staring down at the tests and read the question out loud, and he couldn't hear us. This went on for the rest of the year. It also took me until my sophomore year in college to catch up for all the things I missed in that class. Before that, math was my best subject. I learned a very valuable lesson. I remember on a middle school history final the teacher had peers grade each other's papers. Luckily some cool kid that I barely talked to but gave gum to on several occasions got my test and changed all the answers I got wrong. I got 100%. The girls at my school had it covered. They put on black tights with the information all over their legs. Couldn't see it when the tights were slack. Stretch it out however and all was revealed. Sneaky. Oh, good. Story time. Years ago, I was an assistant language teacher in the JET program. I was crap at Japanese. I could buy stuff and manage, but, well, crap. I decided I would learn some kanji, so applied for the 10th level of the Kanji Kaiten, a test of kanji knowledge for Japanese speakers, and this was the easiest level. So, I showed up for the test, surrounded by 5 and 6-year-olds, which, given him 180 centimeters and 100 kilos, was amusing. Lots of first-year elementary students going, whoa, look at the big foreigner, basically. Anyway, I took the test, and part of it is translating one form of phonetic Japanese to another, hiragana to katakana. In particular, one question was asking me the katakana version of I blanked. I quickly looked through the test to see if they'd use the character, as I was sure I'd recognize it if I saw it. No dice. As I was doing this, I noticed the 6-year-old girl beside me doing something on the table with her hand. I kinda glanced for a second, but it didn't register right away, and besides, test, needed to work on that. At the end of the test they gave you the answers right away, and this question was sticking in my head, so I checked it. Of course, and that's when I realized that the 6-year-old girl beside me had been drawing that character on the table. She had seen me struggling and decided to help, and I was too dumb to understand it. TL. Doctor, 6-year-old tried to help me cheat at a kanji test, but I'm dumber than a first grader. Last year for a book report one of my sophomores copied and pasted the whole first chapter of the book and did nothing else. Dumbest way. I've had students turn in term papers that were completely cut and pasted from Wikipedia. Now, I'm sure that happens a lot. What is particularly funny and unusual is when they're so dumb, they don't realize to take out the hyperlinks in the text, and they use a color printer, so every 5th word is blue. One of my college professors told a story about a student who emailed him a Word document filled with random symbols to make it seem as though the file was corrupted, so he could have more time writing his paper. This professor was very tech savvy and figured it out pretty quick. Girl recorded the answers to a test on an MP3 player. She ran a single headphone up her shirt, taped it to the back of her neck, and then to her ear. The thing is, she wore her hair the same way every day. It went just past her shoulders, so her hair hid everything perfectly, and she looked no different than she did any other day. It worked flawlessly. Edit. Should have mentioned this originally, but I wasn't the teacher. I was another student at the time, and she told me about it after the fact. Oops. Edit 2. She knew the answers beforehand, because it was a test, based on memorization like a spelling test. Happened this year. Not the first time I have posted this. Kid sat at the back of the exam hall, all pupil bags piled up at the back. One bag keeps beeping as messages come in. Regulations state bag must be removed and phone investigated. Phone is receiving texts with the answers to the exam being sat. Pupil in question has Galaxy smartwatch on. He takes photo of questions with his watch when he knows he is not being observed. Watch auto syncs with phone, which auto Dropboxes his photo. Parent at the other end then accessing Dropbox to see questions and replying with answers. Phone sends text message to the watch. Kid freaked up and was caught because he forgot to put his phone on silence. Was a mock exam. I still don't know if they were doing this as a trial run or were just a little dumb. ESL teacher here living in a foreign country. F-king students cheat all the time. It's terrible. I've seen some of the most clever cheating and dumbest cheating. The most clever was when students would take their online quizzes. They'd have to take them in the lab on campus with a proctor. The test used to be set up so that it would give the students feedback and show the right or wrong answer for a few seconds on the screen. Students started taking pictures of these with their cell phones. Keeping in mind there are 6 quizzes per level and 4 levels, so we're talking about 24 quizzes at an hour 5 hours each. Enough students started doing this when TETI's wasn't looking classroom setup not really conducive to keeping an eye on every student all the time, that they had accumulated basically all the right/wrong answers for every question in every quiz. We teachers found out and had to throw away all our tests and rewrite them from scratch. One of the dumbest things I've ever seen was when I was teaching at a private degree Milish college. I taught night and weekend students who had no base of English, little time to study, and zero desire to learn. Some students, particularly elementary ed majors, literally spent more time and energy complaining about having to learn English than actually attempting to learn it. In one of these classes, there was a written short essay test. Another computer lab that was even worse as far as keeping an eye on students. Anyway, the assignment was to write about your favorite holiday, why you like it, and what you did last time. Mother's Day had just passed, so I made that one of the options/suggestions. It's worth mentioning then that the term Mother's Day was written in the instructions. Anyway, one of my students submits this essay talking about Day of the Breast, what she did on Day of the Breast. What happened was she used Google Translate, as many students do, and had zero language skill as for identifying misnomers and basic proofreading. So what's with Day of the Breast? She wrote Diadi la Mama in Google Translate instead of Diadi la Mama. I helped my app politics class develop a foolproof method for cheating. Our teacher would hand out a test each week and make us write the multiple choice answers on a blank piece of paper with our name and date on it. After the test was done, we would hand the answer sheet to the kid behind us, last kid in the row handed his to the first kid in the same row to grade it. The teacher would go over the questions orally and give us the correct answers. I told each kid in the class to write the answer as a lowercase c. If the answer was A, you close the loop and make a lowercase a, and so on and so forth for B and D. Obviously, if the answer was C, you'd leave it alone. We all also agreed that no one should get a perfect score. We had to always get 2 or 3 wrong answers to make the con work. The teacher could never believe we were perfect, and he wasn't able to figure out everyone was getting higher test scores. We left the wrong answers up to the kid who was marking our paper. It worked surprisingly well. No kid snitched because we were all riding the good grades gravy train. My PhD advisor shared this story with me. He was teaching an organic chemistry class, and after the exams, the students could look over their midterms and submit them for A grades if they believed there was a grading error on their test. A certain clever student used whiteout to turn a couple of particularly low scoring pages of his exam blank, then photocopied these pages. With these blank exam sheets in hand, he then correctly answered the questions on the page and used red pen to grade these funny correct responses as incorrect. He carefully restapled these pages into his original exam and submitted the doctored test for a A grade. When my professor saw how utterly horrible the grading errors were, he became suspicious. He went into lab and examined this exam under a black light. What he discovered confirmed his suspicions. 7/10 pages of the exam glowed green, while the other 3 pages, the ones with the blatant grading errors, fluoresced blue. Conveniently, the next lecture for the class was on photochemistry. He began this class by discussing the nature of fluorescence. He explained how many organic materials contain highly conjugated molecules that can absorb light and re-emit it at longer wavelengths. In fact, many naturally occurring materials, such as cotton, wood, and paper, contain polymeric molecules called lignins that exhibit this property. He explained that different paper processing methods could lead to different ratios of these compounds, and thus no 2 batches of paper were ever exactly alike. He brought out the doctored exam under a light, then demonstrated in front of the entire class how most of the pages of the midterm glowed green, but certain pages glowed blue. He then said to the student who submitted this exam, "And you know who you are, would you please see me after class? We need to discuss your continued enrollment at this institution." He showed up after class in tears and admitted the whole thing. He failed the course. Edit. Wow, glad you guys liked this story. Just wanted to mention, I asked my advisor about this today and he confirmed with me that this story is 100% true. He also mentioned that there were approximately 400 students in the lecture hall when he did this demonstration. The sound of hundreds of students collectively saying "holy shoot" was apparently ear-deafening. It took about 5 minutes for people to calm down enough for the lecture to continue. Edit 2. Thanks for popping my gold cherry. Be cool. Stay in school. TL/DR. Student caught swapping pages of midterm and submitting for A grade. Gets caught by chemistry professor because, well, chemistry. My favorite was a student turning in a short story that was the lyrics to Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and trying to claim it was original work. He insisted he'd written it, despite me playing the original song for him. When I was in middle school, we had a teacher who was oblivious to what was going on in the room during tests. We began the year with complex cheating systems, but by the midway point of the year, when we had the old states and capital test, one kid walked over to the USA map on the wall, pulled it down so everyone could see, then walked back to his desk. Our teacher did not notice. Edit. It was a middle school near the Jersey Shore. Shoot me a PM if you still think we might know each other. Viral. Also, 99% sure the teacher cared and didn't know. First year teacher we took advantage of a lot, but she was trying still. When I was a freshman in college, first semester, I was in a intro biology course. It was a big class, probably 200 students. The syllabus stated that there would be 5 exams throughout the semester, and at this point we had already taken the first one and knew that the exam consisted of 40 multiple choice questions, each worth 5 points. So the night before the second exam, I was studying in the library and overheard 3 guys coming up with a plan to share answer. The number of times that they scratched their nail against the desk and tapped their pencil corresponded to the question number and the answer, respectively. On the day of the exam, I'll listen to their scratching and tapping as a reference to double check all my answer. I don't know what they scored, but I raked in that sweet 95. Edit. I thought this would get buried at the bottom, so I didn't really get into the mechanics of their cheating system. Just to address the questions. For the questions, they had scratched with their nail for the ones and clicked their pens for 5s. I think. Either that or it was every T, to be honest. I don't remember perfectly. It was a few years ago, but I think that's how they did it. Oh. Also, they had a way to ask each other to repeat a question, but I forgot how they did it. Not a teacher or professor but a student. In 8th grade in English class we were reading Animal Farm by George Orwell. The teacher assigned a worksheet over the first couple of chapters, so he began to pass out what he thought the worksheet when in reality it was the answer sheet. Realizing his mistake, he collected the answer sheets. A couple of people in the class including myself were able to keep the answer sheet. One of the answers was "answers may vary," and where everyone else just bullshit an answer for that particular question. My friend mindlessly put answers may vary. The next day in class my teacher decided to share my friend's answer with the entire class. The look of humiliation on his face was priceless. We still give him shoot for this today. My chemistry teacher told us a story of a couple of kids he caught cheating. We would take tests where there is a student at each end of a table with their integrity board, a cardboard stand used to block them from seeing each other's paper between them. They each had M&Ms and would signal to each other the question that they needed the answer to, and the other one would eat whichever M&M color they had assigned to A, B, C, or D that was the right answer. When my teacher caught on, he went over to one of the students and ate a pile of a one color so they couldn't signal anymore. Edit. To all of the people saying they could have continued cheating, just don't eat an M&M for that answer. Yes, they could have. However, at that point the teacher knew they were cheating, and they knew that he knew they were cheating, so there was a deterrent for why they wouldn't continue. I had a guy in my Spanish class who lived in Spain for most of his childhood. He finished our final in about 15 minutes, then went to the bathroom. Another guy went to the bathroom 5 minutes later, and when they got out, they changed places. Spanish guy took another 15 minutes to finish his final too, went back to the back room, and took another student's seat. He did this with about 10 students. They all graduated with As. Edit. Some people are doubting the legitimacy of the story, so I'll just explain how we do it in Denmark. In Denmark, we get volunteers to monitor our exams. Mostly people from the retirement home. He could easily have asked different people every time, and there is very little chance they even remembered him. The entire exam is 4 hours long, so he had plenty of time. Absolute dumbest. In a big university lecture hall of 300 plus students, him walking up and down the aisles keeping an eye on everyone shortly after the final exam has started. I look down one row and see that some clown has his notes spread out on the floor in front of him. There was nothing subtle about this. He had about a dozen pages spread out in a semicircle around his seat, clearly visible from either side of the row. I suppose he thought that if he sat in the dead center about 25 to 30 seats, no one would notice from the aisles. He was not correct on this. I walked over and asked, in what was meant to be a whisper, "What the frick is this?" It did not come out as quietly as I had intended. I had not meant to curse either, but I was just utterly flabbergasted. You wouldn't have thought the room could get any quieter, but somehow it did. Every pen stopped. Boy genius looks down at the notes, as if just noticing them, and, almost offhandedly, says, "Oh, those aren't mine. They were here when I sat down." My TARS and I had cleaned up after the previous exam before the students came in, so this was certainly not the case. They were also pretty obviously written in the same handwriting as his exam. I collected the notes, informed him that he's welcome to finish if he would like, just in case he wants to later plead his case to the Academic Judiciary Committee, but that he should not expect to be passing the course. He finished the exam. He did not pass the course. My physics student handed in a homework assignment on a memory key with the wrong file extension. Basically he created a blank not-apped file and then made it unreadable and accused me of not having the right application to open it. I called him out on it having 0 KB filler size. I held him back at lunchtime and showed him how to corrupt a file properly. I'll be damned if he doesn't learn something in my class. For my grade 11 physics exam, I made a formula cheat sheet with every equation or formula I may have needed. When I sat in my seat I quickly and secretly copied my formulas onto the desk very faintly in pencil. All I needed to do now was dispose of the original cheat sheet. How to do this? Eat the paper, of course. It was only then, after forcing down a piece of crumpled paper, that my physics professor brought everyone the formula sheets for the exam. Because as he proceeded to say, "I wouldn't expect you guys to remember every formula. That's ridiculous. I only expect you to remember the steps involved to solve." I ate a freaking piece of paper for nothing. The most embarrassing part was that my friends were aware of my plan and watched me eat a piece of paper before being given what I had attempted to smuggle. Okay, not a teacher, but a student with a long history of cheating. Sometimes really dumb ways of cheating, sometimes really good ways. Dumbest way I have probably ever cheated: taking Japanese 101 in high school, and I copied all the vocab on my phone. proceeded to have my phone out and look back and forth continually from my phone to the test. The teacher definitely noticed, but never did anything about cheating students. Probably my smartest way I ever cheated was taking an online course in college. We have 2 exams, which they use an exam proxy for to make sure you aren't cheating. It's really elaborate. They IP your computer so they can see your screen the whole time, and they have a live proctor watching your movements through video the entire time. If you leave the screen at any point, this being a 2-hour final, you fail. Also, before and after you take the test you have to rotate the computer around your entire room and show them your desk so they can see that there is no notes/something to cheat with around you. Essentially I got my friend to help me out and we made a setup where I was sitting on a table in front of my which was hooked up to another computer in my living room. My friend hid behind the couch in the living room where I was taking the test, so he wouldn't show up when I spun around my computer for the beginning part. Then when I got started on the exam he crawled out, then logged onto the TV in front of me. He would glance over at the questions on my computer. I was very carefully angling my camera so he couldn't be seen. Then he would look up and highlight the answers on the TV screen. All I had to do was glance at the TV for a moment to get the answer to all my questions. When I finished, my friend turned off the TV and crawled away so I could do the closing procedures. I got an A, even though I literally knew like 1/10 questions on the test. The idea was mine, but my friend was the true MVP of the story. I bought him in and out after to say thanks. I went to a midterm with a friend, and we sat next to one of the smartest dudes in the class. The teacher passed out A, B tests. We had anticipated this. I had B and copied every answer off the smart dude's A test exactly. The teacher caught me a few times and the kid totally noticed, but no one said anything because how the frick were answers to the wrong test going to help me? Well, they weren't. In fact, I wasn't even in the class. I didn't even go to that school. My friend, however, did go to that school and was sitting on the other side of me, so he had an A test as well. He copied every answer off of me and aced a test that he would have bombed so badly he almost just plain skipped it until we hatched this plan. I've never giggled so hard leaving a classroom before. The teacher was probably so confused and a little pissed when he didn't get to punish you dumbus that was copying the wrong version of the test. It still makes me chuckle. Edited for clarity. When I was in high school I had a teacher who promised to give an A for the whole course to anyone who could get a perfect on the final regardless of their previous grade point average. No one has ever managed to do it. The final was 100 questions multiple choice on a Scantron sheet, the kind you bubble in with a pencil. Long story short, a good friend of mine who sat across the room from me managed to get the answer sheet and copy it the day before. So the day of the test we both breezed through it and both got 100%. Our teacher was livid, screamed at us both calling us cheaters and demanding to know how we did it. Eventually he calmed down and told us that he would give us both A's, but we had to retake the test tomorrow and miss every question. Of course when we got the test every question was in a different order, making this impossible to anyone who didn't study me. Right before I go to bubble in my first answer I remembered you can't use pen on these tests or it marks every answer wrong. I missed every single question. Teacher was beyond pissed and demanded to know how I did it. I eventually told him, after he swore to God I would get my A for the year. Ended up with an A in the class. I was studying general chemistry at UC Davis. The policy is to not call out specific cheaters. Even if it's obvious, you have to just announce to the entire class that they should keep their eyes on their own exam. Afterwards you take the exam and mark it / keep it separate from the other exams. So the kid wasn't the best at cheating, doing the obvious look at his neighbor's exam. Standard stuff. We made the announcement a few times and gave stern glares to him whenever he looked up. At the end of the exam he comes up and says, "So, what happens if I was caught cheating?" Not a good way to finish your final.